Hi, it's Robin again. Now that we've talked about the bony landmarks of the humerus, we're going to discuss the bony landmarks of the radius and the ulna. Now right here, I'm using the anterior view of the radius and the ulna. However, I also have the posterior view of the radius and the ulna. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to be using the anterior view. So let's get started. The first bony landmark of the ulna is the olecranon. And like we talked about in the previous video, the olecranon process makes up the bony joint of the elbow, or the bony part of the elbow joint. And when the arm is extended completely, the olecranon process of the ulna fits right into the olecranon fossa of the humerus. The coronoid process, which is right here, articulates with the coronoid fossa of the humerus. The trochlear notch articulates with the trochlea of the humerus. The radial notch right here is the site of articulation between the proximal radius and ulna, and this site of articulation creates the proximal radial-ulnar joint. Next, we have the head, and the head of the ulna is at the distal end of the bone. And the head articulates with the ulnar notch between, it articulates with the ulnar notch of the distal radius to create the distal radial ulnar joint. Finally, we have the styloid process of the ulna, and this is the attachment point for connective tissue that brings the distal ends of the radius and the ulna together. Next, on the radius, we have the head, which the surface of the head of the radius articulates with the capitulum of the humerus, and the outer margin articulates with the radial notch of the ulna, once again, creating the proximal radial ulnar joint. Next, we have the neck of the radius, which is immediately distal to the head. Quickly following the neck is the radial tuberosity, which is a muscle attachment point. Next, at the complete proximal end of the bone, we have the radial styloid process, which is the attachment point for ligaments on the lateral side of the wrist. Now, you can't really see it in my drawing right here, but the styloid process of the radius does extend distally further than the styloid process of the ulna, which makes lateral movement of the wrist very limited. For example, in anatomical position, your hand is downward facing like this with the thumb on the outside. So, if I'm moving my wrist medially, there's quite a bit of range of motion. I can almost get my hand completely bent at a 90-degree angle. However, if I were to extend my wrist laterally, it doesn't go very far. This is due to the styloid process of the radius. And finally, we have the ulnar notch of the radius down here, which is the articulation point between the distal ends of the radius and the ulna, creating the distal radial-ulnar joint.